Hey, Ron Newcomb here with the Indie Coach Podcast. I am here with my new friend ZB from across the pond, and we're just going to dive right into it, man, and try to bring some strong value add to people trying to do independent filmmaking. So, ZB, man, tell me a little bit of your personal backstory. How did you get into independent filmmaking? When did you start to say, oh, man, this is a viable potential option, and I'm going to go for it?
Yeah, I've always known that I wanted to work in the film industry ever since I was about 5 years old. I went to university, studied film and television production. That was now about 15 years ago. And then when I left university, I realized, okay, I know how to make a film, but I have no idea how to make any money out of this. I got no idea how to get funding. I have no idea how to distribute or sell a film. So after a couple of years of freelancing, I moved on to have a career in marketing in a completely different industry, in various different startups, and I did performance marketing for regular companies. But during that time, I always stayed passionate about filmmaking, and I always believed that filmmakers really need better access to education on the business side of the industry. Which is why I started a company called CineCircle. And for the last 8 years, it's been a company that really tries to educate indie filmmakers on how they can build viable filmmaking careers, how they can get funding, how they can find more jobs, and how they can distribute and sell their films to really turn what is a hobby for most people into an actual viable career. And with that, my big focus for the last couple of years has been on distribution and specifically self-distribution for indie filmmakers. So just in the 6 months alone, I have self-distributed 7 films. I have coached filmmakers to do the same with quite a lot of their films. And I've really been trying to help filmmakers figure out how they can sell their films so that more of this money that seems to just flow endlessly into the film industry doesn't flow straight back out, but can actually stay within this cycle so that we can make more films.
Yeah, exactly. That's the dream, right? Is just to keep that wheel going. Now, where are you based out of?
I'm based in London.
In London. What is
Yeah.
so I have friends across the pond as well, several of them, in fact. Um, what is the vibe there as far as filmmaking goes?
Well, we've had a rough couple of years since, after COVID, after the writers' strikes, we have not recovered. The indie film industry has not recovered. And the majority of people still don't have jobs. In general, the outlook is not great at the moment. We run this, for example, at CineCircle, we run this event called Film and TV Job Fair here in London. And it's never been more popular because it's there's never been more of a demand for jobs in the industry. I mean, I think we've got like a massive unemployment rate within the indie film industry. But that's also made it given people the time to work on more of their own indie film
That's
projects,
right. Yeah.
which means that the number of people collaborating on films has increased quite a lot, which is positive to see.
Yeah, exactly. And that's definitely something I've seen as well. In the States, it's been pretty hard as well. I'm on the East Coast, so I'm not in Hollywood, I'm not in LA. And even in Georgia, which is notoriously pretty good with their film incentives, or very good with their incentives, it's become difficult because a lot of the studio projects have left. And all the more reason why I think us indies need to stick together, because just like in the ecosystem, small businesses is kind of the backbone of the economy. Same way with film, it's the independent films that provide the bulk of the majority of the opportunities for people, and also more of a reason why you should consider doing it yourself instead of trying to get a job on another project or studio project. Take the bull by the horns. There's a reason why A-list actors all have production companies. Get into it yourself. And self-distribution, which is some of the stuff that I've watched of yours and read of yours, I really love what you're doing there around distribution, because I found that also to be the challenge and the hurdle. And I too focus on the business side of things. You can find out about lenses and cameras and storytelling But what has become very difficult to find is the business side of things, particularly in kind of forward thinking elements. I mean, we just had a major independent film go to the theaters in the States and do extremely well because they had a strong YouTube presence, and that did translate a little bit to butts and seats for theaters. But for the rest of us, talk to me a little bit kind of why I should consider self distribution instead of just getting a deal with a sales agent, and what does the distribution landscape, kind of thinking with the end in mind, what does the distribution landscape look like from now and kind of into the future?
Yeah. I mean, let me tell you this. Self-distribution is far from perfect at the moment, but the reason why I think it's a better option is because the alternative is way
Yeah,
worse.
yeah.
For most filmmakers who are listening to this, who are considering a traditional distribution deal, this is what it's going to look like. You will either go to a sales agent who will sell your film to a distributor, and that distributor will then distribute your film on various different streaming platforms like Tubi and Amazon and so on. In that scenario, the sales agent will take 15 or 20%. The distributor will take 30, 40, or 50%. The streaming platform will take 50%. And you're going to be left with very, very little at the end of that because you are the last one on that chain to get paid. You might not use a sales agent and go directly to a distributor. The thing about distributors is that the majority of them, and there are exceptions, but the majority of them have what are called marketing caps. So they have marketing expenses that they charge, meaning if the distributor takes a 30% cut of the profits that they make you, that does not mean that you get to keep 70%. You get to keep 70% after all their marketing expenses have been paid. Now, these marketing expenses can mean that they get the first $5,000, $10,000, $25,000 that the film makes. So your low budget indie film could make quite a lot of money on streaming platforms, and you won't see a penny. Or you might have a deal with a distributor where they have uncapped marketing expenses, in which case you will never see a penny because your film can make $1 million and the distributor will just say, oh, but it cost us $1 million in marketing expenses to do that. And I have seen so many filmmakers be burned by bad distribution deals, by dishonest distributors, that I have decided that's just not what I want to do. I'd rather do this myself. Now, the alternative is self-distribution, where you can go via an aggregator like Bitmax or FilmHub, and you can put your film yourself onto platforms like Amazon and Tubi and Apple TV and so on. You can do exactly the same thing that a distributor will do. And you're not getting screwed over. You're not paying marketing expenses. God knows why we're paying those because distributors don't do any marketing for your film. Like, let's face it, or the marketing that they do is absolutely minimal. So if you're in charge of your own marketing, don't pay the marketing expenses. Do self-distribution instead, or that's been at least my motto so far.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of times what they will say is the expenses are going to the markets and things of that nature. And so, dear listener, one of the questions you should ask is, what markets do you go to? And you should know that because there's no advantage if they're not going to the markets. Just like ZB said, you can get your stuff on platforms. So if that's no longer the problem, then what are they bringing to you? So, ZB, talk to me a little bit about, for clarity, because I see a lot of filmmakers don't know the difference here. What's the difference between a sales agent and a distributor? And do I need both? And you kind of already answered that, but what's the difference and what do they bring to the table? Why would you want them?
So if you yourself try to sell your film to a distributor, you will get paid in one out of two ways. The distributor will either offer you some sort of buyout fee. So we'll just pay you 100K and we'll have the rights to your film in a certain territory. They will give you an MG, which means this is the minimum that we will pay you. And if we make money over that, we will then start paying you your percentage. Or they will just say, let's do this percentage split. So whatever we make, you keep 70%, we'll keep 30%. The distributor is the organization that connects your film with audiences. They go to cinemas, they go to streaming platforms, and they get your film out there. They put your film in places where audiences can see it, and ideally they also do some marketing so that audiences see it. A sales agent is not connecting your film with audiences, they're connecting your film with distributors. So a sales agent's audience is the distributor. So they will sell your film to a distributor and they will charge you a percentage of what they sell that film for. It's worth pointing out that a lot of distributors are also international sales agents. So, for example, in the US, you will have a distributor that will domestically distribute your film with audiences. But because they have no way of distributing the film, say in Thailand, they might find a distributor there and they will act as a sales agent selling your film to that distributor abroad.
Yeah, that's great. So again, for everybody listening, there are sales agents and there are distributors, and they are different things. A distributor, as defined by Hollywood, if you will, is when we say domestic, many times they're referring to domestic to Hollywood, as in the US, the United States. That's generally domestic. And then there's everything else, which is international sales, which you need to understand just a few years ago was only 40% of the market. It is now 60% of the market is coming from worldwide international sales. So you need to be thinking internationally. And that even includes what genre or story I'm going to move forward with. You want the maximum impact, in my opinion, around that. And a lot of sales agents call themselves distributors, but per definition, they're actually not. They're going to charge you that 20 to 25%, and then they're going to sell it off to a distributor, like ZB said, that will also charge you a percentage. And then you have the platform and on, and you end up with about 5% of the sale, which when you're selling it for $4.99 online is not a ton of money. You really have to maximize it. When you're
It's
so
it's
two,
also it's also worth pointing out, just on that note of percentages with international sales, that number I'm guessing is going to be for all films, including blockbusters, because on the indie, low budget indie level, 95% of your films will come from the US, of your sales will come from the US, and 5% will come from international distribution. That's going to change, we think, quite dramatically with AI. Amazon is already experimenting quite a lot with AI dubbing, which means that they will then be able to put your
yeah,
film worldwide on
crazy.
Amazon rather than just in US, Canada, UK. But it's worth pointing out that at the moment, 95% of indie film sales, and that's whether you have a film that's a UK film,
Yeah,
even,
doesn't
even
matter,
from a
right?
UK, 95% of your sales are in the US, which is crazy.
Yeah, I have a friend of mine who did a localized film in Thailand, and we're trying to figure out the language element. And if there was a Scandinavian film that did the dubbing, and I watched it, and I actually thought it was pretty good. I mean, maybe a few times I noticed, but it didn't mess the story up at all. And I was able to watch it in English, and that wasn't the original language that the actor spoke in. It was pretty crazy, and looking back on this will probably be rudimentary technology in a couple of years. This is going to be everywhere, so everybody's aware of it. So we talk about percentages. Can you talk to me? What is a good deal then? What's a kind of an expectation? And certainly it depends on your film. I totally understand that. But if we can talk in generalities, and it also depends on leverage. Like if you got an A-list star, if you have 10 million followers, that's leverage, right? You can dictate a lot of terms. But on the surface, if I'm an indie filmmaker and I have a good friend of mine right now, she's shopping a film. It's a really well done indie film. What kind of deal should she be looking at and considering? And then I have a follow up question, which is going to be, what questions should she be asking? So, first percentages, and then what are some pitfalls that she should try to ask and clarify?
Okay, so there's a couple of things to look out for in the contract and in the deal. The first one is the percentage. So what's the percentage split? How much is the distributor going to be keeping? Um, I would personally not take any deal where the distributor is keeping over 30%. It's normally going to be sort of around 30%, 25%. That's the majority of decent distributors. There are some distributors that are going to try and charge you 50%. Those distributors, it doesn't matter how big they appear and so on, they're scamming you. Like, there's no other way of saying they're not scamming you. The other thing to take a look at, which is probably even more important than that percentage, is the marketing cap, the marketing expense. You want to make sure that the marketing expenses are capped at something decent. Now, what's decent? It depends. I think for the majority, if you've made a film that's under 100K, I think a decent marketing expense should be zero. Anything over that, you are taking away money straight from your own pocket. The guaranteed money, that first 5K, 10K that's going to come in, is going to go straight to the distributor. Now, there are traditional distributors that do not have marketing expenses. Indie Rights is one of them. They're quite famous for the fact that they take a 20% cut, and from the first dollar that your film makes, you get 80%. They also go to markets. They also, promote your film there, but they do all of that from their 20% rather than these marketing expenses. Because honestly, like their 20%, they're charging you that for all the things that they're doing. And then on top of that, they're charging you a marketing expense for all the things that they're doing. So I never really understood those marketing expenses. So that's the second thing, the marketing expense. The other thing is you need to have something in the contract that says you can actually audit them. Because if they tell you your film didn't make any money, you need to have something in the contract that says you can look at their accounts to make sure that this is actually correct. So again, a company, I'm just talking about Indie Rights right now because I actually just looked through their contract yesterday. They have a clause in there that says you have audit rights, right? The other thing to take a look at, and this is to understand the business side of the distribution companies, most distributors are not making money from the sales of your film. They're making money from the fact that they want to be sold or bought by a bigger distributor. So their entire end game is collect as many films as possible for as long of a term as possible so that they're more valuable in a company and they can be bought by a bigger distributor. And that's another thing, which is you need to make sure that there is a clause in there that says that there is no assignability of the contract to a third party, because otherwise they can sell your contract with them to another party, in which case you will essentially now be distributed and represented by another distributor. And on top of that, that distributor might have different terms that you automatically have to agree to. Another thing to take a look at is the length of the term of the contract. I wouldn't sign anything that's over 5 years. There is no need to sign over the rights to your film for any more than 5 years. Really, I would be looking more at 3 years, but anywhere between 3 and 5 years. On top of that, you need to make sure that there isn't a clause in there. And by the way, the theme of this is they will be putting clauses in to screw you over everywhere. And it is your responsibility as the filmmaker to see those and take them out. You need to make sure that there is no clause in there that says that there is an automatic renewal of the contract. Because what that means is your contract might be for 3 years, and at the end of the 3 years, it automatically renews unless the distributor does not want to renew. But if you don't want to renew, it automatically renews. So you have to look for that. Finally, there is something that distributors have recently started adding into their contract, which is that you are not able to terminate the contract even if the distributor is in breach of the contract. You still cannot terminate it. They've started adding these clauses in. So these are all things that you need to look out for in the contract. But that's the contract. You can sign a great contract and still have a really crappy distribution deal because the distributor is not going to represent you very well. And what questions should you ask the distributor? I wouldn't ask the distributor many questions because the distributor is going to tell you exactly what you want to hear. Instead, what you want to do is look up the distributor on IMDb. And on IMDb, you will be able to see every single film that the distributor represents. Get IMDb Pro. If you're looking at distributing your film, you need IMDb Pro because that means you can look up the producer of every single film that that distributor represents. And for most of them, you will be able to see their contact email address on IMDb Pro. Contact at least 20 of those producers and ask them, hey, we're considering the distributor. What was your experience like? Have they paid? Have they marketed the film? Are you happy with it? And one out of two things will happen. Um, you'll get a reply or not. Sometimes you don't get a reply. But now filmmakers love to brag about their successes. So if the distributor did well, they will tell you that the distributor did well. And also, this filmmakers love nothing more than to talk about scammers and experience and bad experiences that they had. Meaning, if they had a bad experience with a distributor, they will also let you know. So don't ask the distributor questions. Ask the filmmakers who have been represented by them, and that will give you the answer of should I go with this distributor or not. Because at the end of the day, if you get screwed over by a distributor these days, that's on you because we've got all the resources out there to vet distributors now. There's no reason why anyone should be going with a distributor that's going to be bad for them if they did the correct due diligence.
Man, I love it, bro. You're hitting all the things that I have found to be true myself, fortunately and unfortunately. And I've done that very thing, and have had just recently in the past 2 months, somebody reached out to me, had a documentary with a distributor. The filmmaker was considering them. They reached out to me to kind of tell them, and although they were great people, we didn't see a lot of capital from them, and I was able to tell that filmmaker just the truth of the matter. Like, here's the economics. And I was very forthright with that. And I've also done that. I've hopped on the call with other filmmakers, and like you said, they were very forthright to be like, hey, here's the truth, bottom line.
Yeah.
The other thing, listener, is that you can do, and you should be getting what's called quarterlies, right? And it's these quarterly reports on how they're doing with sales. Unfortunately, they're notoriously known in the industry to be late on the quarterlies or not even give you quarterlies. But that is something in the contract. And every contract that I've seen has them, but make sure that's in there. And look, this isn't a debate about AI or not AI, but what I am saying is we live in an age where you can put the contract into AI and have it list out things that you might want to call out. You don't need to take a bad deal. And I totally get it. You're desperate to get your film out there and you don't know how to do it. And there's a part of you that says a bad deal is better than no deal. At least we got something. But I can tell you that is not true. There is another way, and you can do it through self-distribution. There's, unfortunately, talking about the audit, there was a famous one where Peter Jackson, after Lord of the Rings, had to sue the company that did it. And that's where everybody thought we weren't going to get The Hobbit, because there was a lawsuit. And all he did was exercise his right to audit the books. Because again, I wrote an article on this. There's a thing called Hollywood bookkeeping. And like, there are famous films that are technically still in the red, films that made money. I'm talking top tier films that are technically still in the red. You should go check out that article if you want to find out what they are. So an audit. A lot of distributors are going to ask for, like ZB was saying, 50 to 40%. They're going to put terms like 15 years. I mean, 15 years, the life of a film is I like the 3 to 5 year scenario. By then, your film is pretty much exhausted unless there's like some secondary element, a song that becomes popular years later. But your film has a cap life on it with that. So I do want to talk a little bit about self-distribution and aggregators. You already mentioned indie rights and a few others. Do you have any other good stories about using aggregators, what you might consider with aggregators? And then I would even love some real world examples. I get your newsletter and I just read some of them. Some of the posters, man, bro, you crush it on the posters. Those posters of some of your projects that you're helping. I'm a sucker for fantasy and sci-fi, and you got a sci-fi on there that just looks fantastic. I think you got it up in the top 6 on Amazon. So talk to me about aggregators, self-distribution, and maybe even some good test cases that you've seen where filmmakers can go take a look at stuff and be like, oh, wow, okay, this is what they've done.
Yeah. So let me start off with the pure self-distribution model because the pure self-distribution model is one without aggregators. It's one where you can go
That's good.
directly to a platform yourself.
Okay, good.
And there is really two platforms where you're able to do that. Now, it used to be Amazon. If you still have one of those, Prime Video accounts where you can still upload films, hold on to that for dear life because you will not get it again if you lose that account. But most people can't release a film on Amazon themselves anymore. They have to go through an aggregator. But there are two platforms left. One is YouTube and one is Vimeo. Now, everyone might think, yes, but you can't make any money for films out of there. Actually, wrong. So you can. And by the way, Vimeo has a bunch of different competitors now of like Uscreen and Gather and different platforms. But essentially, Vimeo, you will not get a better rate than Vimeo. Vimeo is, a platform for anyone who doesn't know. You can just put your film on there and you can put it available for rent and to buy. You can set your own prices, and Vimeo takes 10%. On the just to compare it to Amazon, if you put your film available to rent and buy on Amazon, Amazon will take 50% and the aggregator will take another 20%, right? So you will make by far the most amount of money on Vimeo. Um, the difficulty with Vimeo is you are responsible for 100% of your sales. Vimeo will not get you a single sale. They will just be there as a platform for you to rent or buy your film. The other hand, if you put your film onto Amazon, it will be available, to everyone who's on Amazon, and you will see a bunch of sales just come in. So let's start off with Vimeo. Is this a viable, option for filmmakers? So I'm an executive producer, and I've also coached the filmmakers in the self-distribution process of a documentary film called Shaken and Stirred, which is the first ever documentary film about flair bartending. It's a pretty low budget documentary, but it's made decent, and so on. Now, they've made hundreds of sales, their film, through Vimeo at $20 per sale. They were selling their film online for $20,
Nice.
which is also what's called PVOD, Premium VOD, which kind of comes before TVOD, Transactional VOD. So it is possible. But what they did is they had a real audience that they've built up over the years of people interested in flair bartenders. They had an entire flair bartendering community that was waiting for the film to come out. And because of that, people were buying the film. So if you've made a low budget horror and nobody knows about it and you do not have an audience for it, you're not going to do well on Vimeo. On the other hand, I think documentaries can do quite well on Vimeo. Projects with a specific topic that people are passionate about can do well on Vimeo, or projects where you are able to access an audience. So if you are a YouTuber or a content creator online and you've got access to an audience of people who will just buy your stuff, Vimeo is a great option. YouTube. It's worth pointing out. So in order to be able to monetize your film on YouTube, you need to have 4,000 watch hours in a 12-month period, and you need to have over 1,000 subscribers. This to most filmmakers is unattainable because you have to be a YouTuber in order to be able to do that. You have to put out constant content every single week. One film is not going to cut it. But there's other things that you can do. You can license your film to other YouTube channels who are monetized. Um, and for everyone who's still thinking, yeah, but this is YouTube, this isn't for films, I am certain that this year YouTube will become the biggest earner from any streaming platform for indie filmmakers. It's
Yeah.
going to overtake Tubi this year. So watch that space and make sure that you figure out how you're able to actually make revenue from your film on YouTube. So that is, and by the way, some success stories of that. You guys check out Jay Horton. He's a big, kind of produce indie film producer that does a lot of low budget documentaries and kind of like low budget indie films, and he self distributes all of them, and he puts quite a few of them on his channel, and some of them have gotten hundreds of thousands of views. That's quite a lot of revenue that you get from YouTube. So if you build up your YouTube channel, you suddenly own your own essentially streaming platform and you have direct access to that. So consider that as the pure self-distribution. And then afterwards, you have the Amazon, Tubi, Apple TV. All of those platforms do not deal with individual filmmakers. they don't even deal with smaller distributors, right? They only deal with big distributors and with aggregators. And there's a very good reason for it. They don't want the headache of dealing with a filmmaker. Like, and one individual filmmaker is going to give them so much headache asking about the specs and giving them a video file that's in the wrong format, and you'll be missing titles and things like that. They want a middleman who's going to make sure that they QC the films that are coming through so that they get the finished product that can just be uploaded. So you can either do that through a traditional distributor or you can do that through an aggregator. And when it comes to aggregators, you really have two options. You've got Bitmax and you've got FilmHub. FilmHub is actually branding themselves as a distributor. They're not. They are an aggregator. I'm sorry, FilmHub, but you're not doing the marketing. You're not doing anything other than putting your film onto platforms, which is the definition of an aggregator. So you are still an aggregator. The way that Bitmax works is you have to pay an upfront fee of $2,500 for the first platform that they will put your film on, and then an additional $500 for every platform after that. And for AVOD platforms like Tubi, you also need to pay a 10% fee, basically for all the sales that come in. They take a 10% commission. FilmHub, on the other hand, now charges $500 to essentially QC your project so that you can get it onto the platforms where you want to be, and then they take a 20% cut. I much prefer FilmHub to Bitmax because it's lower risk. They have a lot of great features. So you mentioned quarterly reports for distributors. If you're doing your own marketing and you're running paid ads in, say, January, most of the quarterly reports are delayed by a quarter, which
Right.
means that you will find out like 6 months later if your paid ads were working or not.
Yeah.
FilmHub, it has direct kind of integrations with Tubi and Amazon and so on, meaning you get a daily report of how
Cool.
well your film is doing on those platforms. So you
Yeah.
start running ads yesterday, and the next day you know if they're performing or not. That is a massive, massive advantage of FilmHub
Yeah.
in comparison to all other traditional distributors. And they will put your film onto platforms, but then you will still be responsible for your own marketing. Um, and as I mentioned, like as you mentioned, one of our films, which is a short film anthology, highly unmarketable film, right? A short film anthology, a low indie budget short film anthology. We put it onto FilmHub. We did the right marketing, and it got to number 6 on Prime Video UK, right? And we were like beating Interstellar and Aquaman during the week that we were up there. Um, which I find kind of funny. Like there was going to be someone at Warner Brothers who wakes up on a Monday morning and they have to explain why some little company called CineCircle kicked them off the top 10. But yeah, so that's essentially how aggregators work and how the traditional self-distribution works.
Yeah, man, what a great explanation. I appreciate that. And I love the actionable information, and not just talking in generalities like, hey, here's some to consider. Bitmax, Film Hub, definitely appreciate that. You come from a marketing background, which is basically in my mind, it's hard to be a filmmaker and not get into marketing at some point. One, it's part of our ecosystem itself. But I also find that it's just storytelling in a different format. You're telling a product story or a company story. How should filmmakers be marketing in 2026 or thinking about marketing? We always hear the stories where there's just the creative artist who just wants to go make their thing and throw it over the wall and kind of make it happen. I haven't found that really to be the case. I think most people are very savvy and smart, understand there's an entrepreneurial element to it. But from time to time, I will find someone that just is like done with the film. They just want to throw it over the wall and kind of get it out there. But how should we, as indie filmmakers, be thinking of marketing? Or do you have any thoughts or advice? What should we be doing? Is there a platform that you prefer? Just talk to me about marketing in general.
Yeah. So I also believe that filmmakers are highly, highly creative when it comes to making films. I believe that they just completely lose that creativity when it comes to marketing. For some strange reason, they think marketing is business. And no, you're right. It's storytelling, it's creativity. You have to get creative. So there's two things that I want to address. The first one is all the money that you spend and all the effort and time that you spend on marketing before the film is finished will give you at least two times the return on your time or spend than marketing after your film is
Mm.
finished. So spending money on the right cast, on the right elements that make your film marketable, that is going to give you a way, way higher return
Mm.
on your time than trying to promote your film after it's done. So I first want to talk about what makes films marketable. Um, Cast is a big one that everyone talks about. I'm not really going to go into much time with that because everybody knows the better the cast you have, the more noticeable the cast you have, the better your film will perform. But outside of that, what makes your film marketable? There's a couple of different elements. The first one is find a film that's actually needed in the marketplace, that there is a demand and not enough supply. So for example, there's a big need for horror films. But guess what? So many filmmakers are making horror films now because we've all been saying that horror films are this marketable genre, that there's also a ton of supply, right? So, what are some genres where there's a really high demand but not enough supply? We've seen this with, especially with the rise of platforms like Tubi. Over the last couple of years, we've seen that what are called urban films, which is essentially films with a predominantly black cast, are crushing it on Tubi. I mean, absolutely crushing it. And even films like dramas, which are, normally not a great marketable genre, if you have a black cast, it's going to do well. If your film sucks, it's most likely still going to do well because there's such a demand for films with a predominantly black cast and not enough supply because we haven't been making those films for the last 20 years or definitely nowhere near enough, which is now, there's just, if you make that type of a film, it's going to do really, really well. So that's an example of finding a film where there is a lot of demand and not enough supply. I'd argue that every single film that's ever become successful is one that was needed in the marketplace, right? If someone does made a film and it's not needed in the marketplace, no one's going to watch it. So you have to figure that out. But also, I would take a look at other things that you can add to that film that have marketable elements. For example, invest in one really cool scene that you can put at the start of your trailer. If you've got an action film, invest in that one VFX shot that you can plaster on your poster and plaster on your trailer and so on. That's going to help sell the film. Consider adding some sort of hook into the film, into the making of the film, or into the film itself that's going to make a great headline for a newspaper. And I'll give you a great story for that. There is a documentary filmmaker who created a film called King of UFOs. So it's a documentary film about UFOs. And he had an interview with this private detective somewhere in Canada who basically said that he saw King Charles piloting a UFO, right? The tabloids in the UK just ate that story up. Like the biggest newspapers all wanted to have the headline King Charles piloting a UFO. And his film did really well. He put it on Film Hub, he put it on Tubi, and it did really well. So ask yourself, what is that headline? That will also make your film more marketable. So create a film that's actually marketable. That's step one, right? Um, and then consider exactly how you're going to be connecting with your audiences. That's another thing that's really, really important, but it is so hard to do once the film is finished.
Mm.
It's so incredibly hard to connect with audiences. Because at the end of the day, if you come to an audience going, I have this film, but you don't have their trust already, they see you as a salesman, right? If you have already built up that trust by becoming a creator and so on, then they will like your film. And the biggest advice that I can tell filmmakers is stop spending 5 years doing one film that you then try to promote. Just make movies. And all of your social media accounts, whether it's TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, should never be for the film. They should be for you as a creator or for your production company. Ideally for you as a creator, because people don't follow films online. They follow creators online. They follow people, which means that That way, you're actually able to build an audience over time, and with every single film, you'll have a bigger audience. So get out of this mindset of I need my first film to be absolutely perfect. Just go out and do something and put it out there and start building the audience.
Man, I mean, again, a bunch of gold there that I totally agree with. Something I read a book about writing books, and it was called Right to Market. And it was all about seeing what the market wants and then writing the book that you're passionate about, but that the market needs. And I so resonate with that in film. And so many filmmakers don't want to hear that. You know, they want to just write their passion project, usually a drama of sorts. And if you know anything about, like ZB said a minute ago, drama is the hardest genre. Okay. That is the hardest genre. That is the genre sales agents do not want because they have a plethora of them and it's very difficult. And I already mentioned the international sales. Dramas are hard to translate internationally. What one country finds, you know, dramatic, the other might not. So let me see if this resonates, ZB. Um, what I say is your film has to have spectacle, and it could be cast, and we all know that, and we don't need to define that, but that's only one spectacle. It could also be the Michael Bay treatment. You've got an awesome visual effects. What caught me about your project was your poster. And I just read your article a bit ago, and you really go into posters, which again, that same guy about books talks about when you're buying a book on Amazon, you know, it's a little tiny little book cover, but that's what people buy. And, you know, I talk to a lot of filmmakers, and filmmakers feel the need that they have to over explain their film. And once they do, then you'll love their film. They don't realize that people are going to make a decision on your poster and your log line. And that's about it. And if you can't get their butt in the seat on that, you've lost them. And I also follow a lot of entrepreneurs outside of film, just regular business people. And what I can say with certainty is that personal branding is here to stay. People don't buy from brands anymore. They're buying from people. So the more that you can kind of bleed on the pages and onto the screen and show behind the scenes, that is going to only pay dividends because, like you said, trust is a huge thing. But spectacle is either, you know, A-list talent, it's strong visuals, it could be a unique location, it could be a unique hook, which is, you know, what you talked about. And so you don't have to have just A-list talent. A lot of indie filmmakers think, well, if I could just get Tom Cruise in my film, then I'll be it. Yeah, and we all understand that, but you're likely not going to get that. So then the question becomes, should you still make your movie or not? And invariably, you have to find what is that hook. And that's kind of the big thing.
Yeah.
You know, you should also know who's your avatar. Who is your audience? Who's this project for? And usually it's you or you a few years ago or something that you love or passionate about. I love fantasy and sci-fi, so I know my tribe. You know, I know what they like because I'm part of them. I'm not coming from outside trying to sell them. I'm one amongst them that is just telling the story. And now I have trust and value, and I was able to leverage that. You know, money is not a problem, it's the problem. And indies try to solve that a lot of different ways. I know I didn't send you questions over earlier, so you might not be prepped for this, but just carrying a good conversation forward. Do you have any thoughts about monetization and specifically around crowdfunding? You know, years ago, everyone thought that was kind of the golden ticket to get funds, you know, for projects was through crowdfunding. But now crowdfunding has just become so difficult. Just to get 20 grand, 25 grand will about kill you. And you got to promise everything out there. And I just want to talk through kind of money, financing, crowdfunding. Do you have any thoughts around, you know, how do I get my project funded?
I've got a lot of thoughts on that. I mean, the first one being let's get crowdfunding out of the way first. Crowdfunding is great because it's soft money. It's not money that you need to pay back to an
Yeah.
investor, which means that if you crowdfund say 50K and you make your film for 50K, as soon as your film starts making money, you start making
You
money
got
as
it.
a producer, right?
Yeah.
Great. Unlike if you have investment, you don't make money from that film until that
No,
investment is paid back.
that's right.
So crowdfunding is great because it's soft money. Now, crowdfunding, I've done a lot of successful crowdfunding campaigns in the past. I've coached on quite a few. I've coached on a couple, last year, like towards the end of last year. And I can tell you that it is getting progressively harder and harder and harder. I did a crowdfunding campaign in 2016. We got 15K. Like it was easy. It was like let you email some of your friends and you will get 15K. Then we did another crowdfunding campaign in 2018 where we were looking to raise $40,000 and we did. But that was already hard. That was already very difficult. And then it got more and more difficult. Then there was one year in 2020 where crowdfunding was actually really easy because everyone was at home, everyone was on their phones during COVID, and all the people who had a lot of money were supporting artists. So they were all going on crowdfunding. You could put your project up on there, and people were giving you like a grand, 2 grand, So there was a good year, and then it got back to being really, really difficult. And especially now, after the writer strikes and so on, and COVID, there's been a prolonged period of time where filmmakers say, guys, we need help, we need help, we need help. And we're getting to this point where everyone's like, guys, figure out how to make some money out of this because, we can't just continuously keep donating you money. So crowdfunding is difficult. Now, here's what I'd say crowdfunding can be easier when you stop asking people for donations and start thinking about it as a sales process, really, and start thinking about the value that you're giving people. And I'll give you an example of that. There is a producer in the US called Aaron B. Kuntz. He had the third highest grossing Kickstarter campaign of all time. He raised nearly 2 million for his Kickstarter campaign. I interviewed him a couple of years ago, and he said, listen, one of the big things that we did was we told filmmakers, hey, if you donate to this campaign, the rewards starting literally from $15, you will be put into a Discord channel where we will show you exactly how we fund the rest of the project, how we produce it, how we distribute it. We will give you daily updates. This $15 is going to be the cheapest and best filmmaking education you will ever get. And he got thousands of filmmakers going, hell yes, I want to be in that group. I need to be in that group. It feels exclusive. It feels like there is a lot of value there. So he did that. He then had this mentality of really changing things that most filmmakers ask for as a favor and spinning it around and saying, no, 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 I'm offering you value. So he reached out to Deadline and he said, hey, write an article about my crowdfunding campaign. But instead of saying, please write this article, he said, this campaign is picking up traction. It is soon going to be the highest performing Kickstarter campaign, the highest grossing horror Kickstarter campaign. Your readers are going to want to know this. Everyone is searching how to do crowdfunding campaigns right now. Write a piece. They wrote a piece and it was the highest clicked on article on Deadline that week. And that
Wow.
got them a ton of stuff. So it's thinking about how, rather than begging people for things and asking people for donations, what value can you offer people? And a very simple example of this in the rewards is this. Most people, that first $10 reward, put down, we will give you a social media shout out. Who wants that? Honestly, who wants that? Who wants to be tagged in a post of a bunch of other people on Facebook? But instead, when I'm coaching filmmakers, I'm telling them, switch that around to, we will promote any link that you want as long as it's, not like something incredibly indecent. We will promote any link that you want to your business, to your IMDb, to your showreel, to your trailer across our socials for that. You're still doing a post, but now you're offering a lot of value. And I'm thinking $10 across all their socials. Sure, put a link to my trailer. I get quite a bit of views out of that. I'll be helping you and I'll be getting something out of it that I actually want. So have a think about what you can put in the rewards in order to actually provide value. So that's my biggest advice for crowdfunding. There's all this other stuff like you need to make sure that there's scarcity, you need to make sure that there's urgency, and all these psychological things that I coach filmmakers on. But that's the big one: provide value. Crowdfunding aside, let's continue with the soft funding because you will need to get as much soft money as possible, as much soft funding as possible. So you have to look at the tax credits available in your state or in your country. The UK is actually pretty good for that. We have a 32% effective tax credit. Tax credits can be really complex. By the way, there's lots of different tax credits. There's tax rebates, there's tax credits, non-transferable, transferable. Pretty much every single time you do a tax credit, you will need an accountant. You will actually always need an accountant to sign off on your tax credit at the end when you're actually claiming it back. In the UK, it's like they offer you this percentage, but only on 80% of the spend after this and that. So you have a whole calculations rather than just saying it's 32%. So there is lots of calculations to think about that. But if you're not using those regional incentives, and you're really missing out. So tax credits, you need to make sure you have a think about that. So for example, California sucks for any kind of incentives. There is other states that are much better. Then you have to look at, okay, what kind of other soft funding can I bring in? Is it, can I have some, a brand sponsorship, essentially, can I have some product placement? Um, there is so many stories that I've heard over the years with filmmakers saying, hey, going to an airline and going, right, it would cost us 20K to hire out this plane for a couple of hours. But if we show your logo in this film and so on, etc., etc., will you give it to us for free? And they go, sure. Like if again you're presenting as much value as you're extracting from them, then you can get quite a lot of things for free. So filmmakers should be trying to get as many things for free as possible. And then finally, you will need some cash investment. You will need an investor who is actually going to come in and who's going to A, cash flow all of that soft funding that you've just raised, because most of that, you're not going to see a penny of that until after the film is made. So you need the cash, which you can do either through a bank loan or through a private investor. But then you also need some equity investment, some private equity investment. And I can tell you right now, there is there is really one reason that investors do not invest in projects, and it's rarely because of the film itself. It's because they don't trust you. They don't trust that you will give them your money back. And the best way to know, can I get them my money back, is uh, have I done it in the past? If you're a film producer and you're making a film in a budget range of 500K, have you ever made a film that's made 1 million, which is really what you're going to need to make in order to get them back their 500K? If not, you do not know how to do this. And you have to be honest with the investor. I don't know how I'm going to get you your money back. It's wishful thinking, it's hope, but I need to know exactly how I'm going to get that money back. And so people say, okay, well, I need the money like in order to be able to prove that I can do this. And that's where I argue that you don't. I think every single filmmaker, the first thing that they should do before they seek out any private investment is they should make a feature film and they should self-distribute it and they should make money out of it to understand how the process works. Now, we all have a 4K camera in our pocket. With a great camera and so on, you can get, if you want an additional $10 mic on Amazon, go out and film a documentary about something that you're interested in. Find a topic that you're really interested in, film a documentary, uh, edit it. You can do it Jay Horton style in 2 weeks. Put it up on Film Hub, get it distributed, make some money to show, oh, this is how it works. Or your film won't make any money, and then you'll realize, oh, it hasn't made any money. At least I haven't lost any money, right? Because the last thing that we need is more filmmakers who have no idea how to make money for investors, who are burning through investors, who instead could be giving money to projects that actually make money and keeping more of that money in the industry. So those are my biggest pieces of advice on film
Man,
funding.
gosh, you say the same thing I say, is that we are the ones hurting ourselves the most by burning investors. Every time I go have an investor conversation, unfortunately, they tell me about some story where they gave somebody 25 grand or 50 grand to go do a film or a documentary, and they didn't see a dime back. Or they know one of their, because money knows money. And so they,
Yeah.
one of their friends gave 25 grand. And I mean, I could think of story after story. And we're the ones. We're like, man, if you just give me the money, I'll be able to go and do all these cool things. And yet, historically, that's not been the case. The collective we, the indie filmmaker, have been doing that for years now. And we've got more losses than wins. We need to get better at the business side. And there's a way to
Yeah.
do it. I mean, one of the things I think you can do, ZB, is you could hire guys like us. If your resume isn't there, go find the producers that are there and align yourself with them. And just like ZB said, bring value to them. I get pitched all the time. And what people really want from me is for me to give them, and I don't know where they get this from, but they want me to write them a check and then move out of the way, right? That's all they want from me. They want me to write them a check and then just let them go for it. And they've never done it before. And that's not the way business works. Okay. And there are people that you can align yourself with. So I know we're coming down to it a little bit, but I want to give you a scenario and then get your thoughts of what you might do. If you had 500,000 US, what would be your play? Would you go make a feature? Would you use that to parlay to get more money, get cast and go bigger? What would, in 2026, you have 500,000. What would ZB do right now?
Yeah. I would make 5 features.
Nice.
So I would first of all, 500,000 is not a great budget range to be in. Like it's really, really not, right? You want to be under 150,000 or you want to be like over 8 million. Everything in the middle,
Mm,
it's going to be really, really, really difficult. So the first thing that I would do is go into the 100K budget range and make 5 different marketable features with potentially with 5 different crews, or perhaps actually setting them all up for, let's shoot 5 films with the same DOP. You could get some discount rates and so on.
right.
If you're doing 5 different features, you could get big discounts with equipment hire companies and all of that as well. But the first thing I would do is like an investment, you should do diversify your portfolio. Do not make one film for 500K, make 5 films for 100K instead. You need one of them to do well. And that is going to make up the money for the other. I can guarantee you 2 of those films are going to make nothing, 2 are going to do okay, and 1 hopefully is going to actually make you that money back. So make 5 films, make them all different. Make a horror, make a sci-fi, perhaps make an urban film, make a documentary about something quite marketable, again, like UFOs or Bigfoot or something like that, that there is an audience and a demand for. And then maybe make one film for yourself, whether that's a drama or something, even if there's something that you're super passionate about. But make 5 films. Do not make a film for $500 right now, $500,000. You will not make the money back.
Man, I love it. All right, I'm going to ask you about one more topic, and then I want to know where people can find you and so forth. What are you feeling right now, or what is, because I know what's happening kind of in the States. My ear is very much down to the ground about vertical content, micro dramas. What is the UK ecosystem? Is that on y'all's radar at all? Vertical content, these micro dramas. Are you guys looking at this at all, or is anybody filming those over there right now?
Yeah, I mean, I'm aware of it because I'm like very much in the space of, of trying to find the new trends and so on. For example, I recently coached a filmmaker who's got a sci-fi film called Whisper Breach, distributed it over Film Hub. And yeah, and he also got, he actually got a offer from Real Shorts to put his
Okay.
film on there. It wasn't even a vertical film, but they will
Hmm.
cut it up and
Interesting.
slice it up
Yeah.
into stories. In
Yeah.
the end, he said no because you have like no control over what they do with that film, so they can
Yeah.
make it turn it into anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, it's a growing space, but honestly, do I see a big future of it? I think most people find it quite annoying to watch films and vertically. Like I think most people, it's one of those things where I think it's a trend that's probably going to die
Yeah.
off.
Yeah.
But There are right now companies and platforms that are paying filmmakers
Yeah,
hundreds of thousands of dollars
a lot
to
of money.
produce these little 1 minute vertical short films that are
Yeah.
literally shot on an iPhone. So I think some filmmakers are making some serious money from that right now.
Yeah, my
Yeah.
concern is with it, it's kind of a race to the bottom though, because the budgets are just small and you still have to do the same work as almost like a feature. And the budgets are tiny. And who's making the money right now? The platform. That's who's making the money. I'll give you an example. I interviewed a guy, he did a vertical for 75,000 US. The platform made 10 million on his vertical. And how much did he get out of that? Zero. Zero. The platform made all the money. Now you have to have, they had a ton of marketing. Okay. So the marketing expense, that wasn't after expenses. That's just what the platform made.
Yeah.
Um, Man, this has
Yeah,
been
it's one of
awesome
it's one
conversation.
of those things where I would argue that that platform lost money probably on
Yeah. You'd have to
I
prove
highly
it out.
doubt that they're profitable at this point.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the filmmaker made 75K to make a film, so perhaps it could have actually been a win. But I find it a bit dangerous to look at those numbers and go, man, these platforms are ripping us off. These platforms are usually not profitable, and they are
Mm.
just burning investors' cash because they're spending so much money on marketing that we don't
Yeah.
see, and then
Yeah.
they're going bankrupt a couple of years later. So that
Yeah.
filmmaker made 75K and pocketed it. I would call that a win for
That's a
them.
win. Yeah. Yeah. No, you're totally right. There are Chinese companies trying to get into the US market, and their marketing spend, from what I'm seeing and hearing, is huge. And if they don't go huge, they don't make it.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to kind of see how it all plays out. It kind of reminds me a lot of VR, back in the day, or web series, when they were kind of a thing. And so, yeah, certain trends come and go. Storytelling doesn't, though. So your goal is, the filmmaker is to be a storyteller. Well, ZB, it's been awesome, man. I'm confident we could continue the conversation, but I think there was a lot of strong value add that you've given. Where can people find you, support you? What are you working on next? Talk to us about how to get a hold of ZB.
Yep, so love to connect with anyone on LinkedIn. Can look me up, ZB Siwek, Siwek. You can check us out and check my company out, cinecircle.co.uk. We run a variety of events for filmmakers, courses, things like that. But we also help filmmakers distribute short films through our anthologies. That's one of those anthologies that made it to number 6 on Prime Video. So you can submit your short on our website. And yeah, we just try to help filmmakers in a variety of different ways. So you can check out CineCircle, or you can get in touch with me on LinkedIn.
Awesome, man. Well, I definitely appreciate you being here. Again, a lot of great information. I appreciate you all watching and listening. Don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a comment. If you got a question for ZB and I, leave a comment. Just let us know that somebody's out there and that this matters. Because as we all know, it does help with the algorithm as well. But I believe we are good to conclude our discussion with ZB. And remember, nothing is wasted. I'll see you next time.